time for Greg Bishop and the Council Roundup.
Well, last week I was off, but so was the City Council because they have 5 Tuesdays in the month, so they took last week off, so we didn't miss a thing. So that's good. But last night was a committee of the whole deciding which ordinances go on consent and which ordinances go on debate agenda, and pretty jam-packed agenda, including a settlement of a lawsuit. That's the first ordinance up for consideration at last night's Springfield City Council meeting. Here is how that ordinance played out.
23-380, an ordinance authorizing payment of $128,000 for settlement of Central District of Illinois Federal Court Case 19-CV-3093, Andrew Dunleavy versus City of Springfield and James O. Langfelder.
Move for debate.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. We send 2023-380 on to the council with due pass recommendation for the debate agenda. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Mr. Chair.
So former Springfield Mayor Jim Langfelder was there to explain a bit.
I think it should be appealed. The case should be appealed. And one thing with regards to the ordinance, to add clarity, it should include the jury's judgment. And so I did bring the amendment to add that language for clarity and add transparency. And if I could just pass it out real quick.
So he passes it out, but what we have here is, let me just read to you a description. The ordinance authorizing payment of $128,000 for settlement in that court case of Andrew Dunleavy versus the City of Springfield and James O. Langfelder. The ordinance authorizes payment for the settlement of Central District Court case regarding wrongful termination because of his race. And you've got the mayor that handed out a document of sorts that kind of spells this out, but let's hear a little bit more from Mayor James Langfelder, former mayor of Springfield, as to what he wants to see happen here.
The fifth whereas, I'm going from memory, just lists Mr. Dunleavy's willing to accept the settlement of $128,000. I think it should read, and it's on the document coming around, and again, you can discuss it next week, where to read, whereas the jury awarded a judgment of $1 against the city and $0 against James O. Langfelder, and whereas the city and Mr. Dunleavy are willing to settle this lawsuit in the total amount of $128,000 for lost wages and attorney fees, and then you can go on from there. But in my own opinion, in addition to the plaintiff and attorneys should provide an itemized invoice if they haven't already. That should be included with the ordinance, but I don't know legalities with regards to that. But again, personally, I believe the case should be appealed, but if the City Council wants to settle the case, the ordinance should be amended as requested for clarity and transparency.
So, again, you've got this measure that's in front of the City Council, and we'll see what happens there. But next
It's
up,
authorizing a subrecipient agreement 102-301-5 with Memorial Behavioral Health and Payment in the amount of $250,505 pursuant to ICJIA grant number 102301 for the Springfield Police Department.
Motion.
so that's $250,000 for a particular ordinance dealing with homelessness.
An ordinance
Another one.
Authorizing a subrecipient agreement 102-301-2 with Washington Street Mission and payment in the amount of $377,937 pursuant to ICJIA grant number 102301 for the Springfield Police Department.
So that makes it over $600,000 for this initiative. Alderman Sean Gregory had some questions.
I just had some questions on not only 385 but 387. I have full respect for Washington Street Mission and what they do, and I think the premises of the grant and what that's for fits that. I do have some questions on the other two that I will talk with Corporation Council about and be ready to make my vote next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, back.
So the ordinance is obviously several here to deal with tackling the homeless population. Another
Solid
one.
Rock Youth Transitional Services and payment in the amount of $587,500 pursuant to ICJIA grant number 102301 for the Springfield Police Department.
Entertain a motion.
So now we've got over $1 million for this initiative. Here's more questions.
You know, I've been around a long time and dealt with a lot of different groups, but I'm unaware of who this Solid Rock Youth Transitional Service, who are they?
So the police chief, Ken Scarlett, got up to address those questions. Here he is in front of the council.
Some of you may remember we were here when you all approved
the acceptance of this pilot program from the state of Illinois. We're one of 4 cities selected to create we're given $3 million to create a co-responder program of our choice. We utilize the homelessness epidemic here in our community, and as you notice in the ordinance that you put on the consent agenda back in May, it had all the lists of the agencies that were going to be paid. So essentially what we did is we took our subject matter experts on homelessness, which will be our homeless outreach team, and their contacts in our community, the ones that we'd already established working relationships with that were helping us through the homelessness crisis, and they were essentially made aware of this grant. They had the option to come up with proposals that they then had to submit to the state, and it was ultimately the state that decided which agencies would receive funding based upon their proposals.
So that's the police chief talking about this. We'll have more on this because they had other ordinances. Right now, the total is over $1 million for these programs. But what other programs are there and what other questions do aldermen have? We'll tackle that next here with the Council Roundup on WMAY. All right, back with the Council Roundup. Last night's Springfield City Council meeting, dealing with a whole bunch of ordinances looking to fund opportunities to combat homelessness in the city of Springfield. We heard a little bit from the police chief, but let's now hear from the assistant chief, Josh Stunkel. He was there as well to lay out his understanding of how these grants are coming together for the city to use for co-responder programs and tackling the homelessness issue.
Addresses a very specific need in the homeless community, and that is foster children. It was one that, when we began this, I didn't have a lot of past knowledge of or understanding of, but when you talk to some of the people who are dealing with our homeless community, it was definitely a gap in the services, and so that is why we chose to fund them, but that is the focus of that group.
So what are they providing? I mean,
Alderman
what
Williams.
particular part of the homeless, I guess? I don't know.
Specifically towards kids who are aging out of the foster system and don't have anywhere to go. So they will be providing services and I believe housing. I'd have to look specifically.
And they were essentially made aware of this grant. They had the option to come up with proposals.
So I would like for them to present or do something. But we have it on debate, so we'll be able to take care of that. And then, questions like, well, how often do they age out and how many age out that would be a part of this, problem? But we can deal with it next week if you wish.
I would suggest that you have them here next week, and there'll be other questions
So yeah, obviously
Yes,
other
that's
questions in all of this. So more on the issue last night with more dollars coming into the fray for these programs. Here's last night's Springfield City Council meeting with Alderman Sean Gregory asking even more questions.
I just feel like that this grant, and when it was submitted, for some reason, is sort of different from the original goal of what that co-pilot program was, originally to be. And I could be mistaken, but it's sort of going off scope a little bit. I have some definite experience with foster care and aging out in foster care and things of that nature, and I definitely know how important that is in our community. But I just feel like we are shifting so many funds to and we have some other funds for it. And what I haven't seen is us do a lot of the things that we've talked about with violence prevention and really what ICJA does. I'm sort of curious how we got the funding so fast, with this, when I know there's other ICJA grantees that's sort of struggling in that matter.
Yeah. All right, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep in mind, this is a pilot program we were selected for by Governor Pritzker in the state of Illinois. This has been ongoing for well over a year. Every facet of this grant was approved by ICJA. Well, this is not something that we just said, let's pick A, B, C, and D. This is has went through the entire grant process, proposals. These organizations had to submit proposals to the state, who then in turn accepted their proposals. Springfield Police Department simply is overseeing this entire grant, if you will. I'm not the subject matter expert when it comes to homelessness, and that's why we rely on these agencies within our community to help us with some of these problems.
I totally understand, and I think we have some great agencies in our community to really help with people experience homeless. That's why I had no problem approving Washington Street Mission.
And more from the police here. Stunkel jumps in as well to elaborate on these programs and more.
When we started going through this and we started receiving proposals, it started with us receiving notification that we were going to be getting this money. We decided we already had a co-pilot, co-responder program in the works, social workers riding with police officers. We had other funding for specifically towards violent crime. And when they said, hey, we've got $3 million towards a problem in Springfield, you picked the problem. We chose homelessness. We started reaching out to partners who were already working with our homeless outreach team for proposals. We had several proposals. We sent several of those to ICJA for approval, and they denied many of them. And that's why some of these numbers, when certain proposals got denied, then we spoke to some of the groups whose proposals got improved and said, how can we expand your program? And so that's where some of that comes in, because ICJA would only take some of those proposals. Other things they weren't willing to fund. So that therefore pushed some of those up. The grant had very specific parameters, one of those being crime victims. So you see sojourn that comes in there who you don't usually think about as maybe homeless, but there are crime victims who become homeless. And so they submitted one, ICJA approved what they had. And then other priorities that we had, you had to have a social worker involved in the program. Had to be social workers and police officers working together. SIU School of Medicine, who's getting a bulk of that. I don't think you guys have chosen debate or consent on that. We had to have social workers. We needed that. So we reached out to them. They were able to provide the social workers. The program theory is, rather than them riding with police officers and going out on the street where maybe they might encounter somebody, we're going to use the Washington Street Mission, have the social workers in the mission where the homeless people are already, 130 to 160 people a day who are coming through the mission. We'll have social workers in the building who can meet with those individuals and really catch them before they become in crisis is the goal and the hope of that.
So, again, some of the statements there from the police who are involved in operating these programs. We'll hear a lot more with even more spending requests in front of the city council last night. So that's on the way with the council roundup from last night's Springfield City Council meeting. I'm Greg Bishop on WMAY. All right, we got a lot more left to get to here with the council roundup from last night's Springfield City Council meeting. Already hearing of more than $1 million worth of different programs for a co-responder program and helping tackle the homelessness issues in Illinois, and particularly here in the capital city in Springfield, all being managed by the Springfield Police. Another ordinance that's up for consideration. Let's go ahead and hear that from last night's Springfield City Council meeting.
02301-3 with the Board of Trustees of Southern Illinois University on behalf of its School of Medicine and payment in the amount of $768,168 pursuant to ICJIA grant number 102301 for the Springfield Police Department.
Move for consent.
So that now puts it at over $1.8 million in these programs. Let's hear more about this.
This is what you just was referring to. These would be the social workers that ride with our police department out on the streets. This amendment here that pays the school for the social workers, correct?
Not for riding with police officers, but meeting with the individuals who are suffering, whether it be crime victims, at the mission.
Okay, so
we're remodeling part of the mission so that we can have offices there for the social workers and the officers to be present and meet with individuals there.
Well, so if we could have them come Friday, I mean, I don't think I would hold it up on debate, but so I've always advocated that we need them talking to the individuals on the street, these social workers, these mental health workers, and not, I'm not feeling the impacts is what my argument has always been. So we're going to give, $768,000 to the school for social workers to meet in the office somewhere.
We currently have a co-responder program where we have social workers riding around with officers, meeting with individuals who are in crisis. So we've got that covered through another grant with Memorial Behavioral Health. This one, trying it a different way, see if we are more successful. You kind of get a comparison then. What's better, using the social workers out on the street, waiting for a crisis to happen, waiting for them to meet with individuals, or focusing their time where the individuals are, where we know the individuals are going to be at the mission? As I said, 130 to 160 a day. We know that there will be people there that they can meet with who are already part of that community, who are utilizing those services. We can get them directly into them.
So that's Josh Stunkel responding to some of Alderman Williams's comments there. More from Stunkel and others in front of the council last night.
Utilizing the social workers' time best in a squad car, or are they, focusing their time and energy, to those specific times when we know people are there? Are we going to get more results? And really tracking those two and comparing them. What we've already been doing with the homeless outreach team is really, so we've got a social worker embedded with them. We're doing something that not really, to my knowledge, any other agency in Illinois is doing, having 3 separate programs. We're going to be able to compare them to and find out which really is the best way moving forward.
And then Alderman here from another official with the Springfield Police Department that deals directly with the homeless population in Springfield. Here's Michael Newman.
Sir, how you doing? My name is Michael Newman. I am the Homeless Outreach Team Coordinator for the City of Springfield. Good evening, all the persons. I just wanted to add, I heard your question about, social workers going to the missions and things of that nature versus being on the street. Just wanted to let you know that over 34,000 individuals passed through Washington Street Mission last year. We may not see all of those individuals, and I mean not reusing the services over and over. These are people who came, it was individual names. Wow. There were over 34,000 people. These places like the Washington Street Mission, Salvation Army, a lot of the unhoused do not make themselves known on the street during the day. So it is very difficult to find them. They don't trust. So they hide in the woods, they hide in abandoned buildings, but they will utilize these services because they have to eat, they have to seek medical attention. So if we're not inside of some of these organizations, we will miss out on helping some of those that really need it.
So, again, you've got the homeless coordinator there talking about some of the policies, and he continues with more from last night.
We've connected over 40 people with their families out of state. We've also connected more people just this last year than the last 3 years with healthcare services. We've also housed more individuals in this last year than we have in the last 3 years altogether, with the help of other agencies as well, like Helping Hands, Salvation Army. So I know that there's always going to be the influx because we do have all of the ability to help people. So, we've got other agencies, unfortunately, bringing people to the city of Springfield and letting them out in the public. So we find these people, we help them out, and sometimes we can get them to California, sometimes we can get them to Texas with their mothers or fathers or grandparents who haven't seen them for upward of 20 years. I sent a gentleman to Mississippi, hadn't seen his children for 40 years. Wow. We're reuniting families, and we're making a difference out there. And I hope that, and I welcome anyone to call me in for a discussion or to come right along with us, because you don't really see the impact a lot of times unless you're right there. And when you have a young woman or a young man that's out there homeless on their last, and sometimes with children, and you have to get them into shelter and you make that difference that day, those are the things that won't be seen. What will be seen is the person panhandling on the corner, the people sleeping outside of Walgreens. You'll see that, and that is a problem. I absolutely concur with that. However, what's happening behind closed doors is a much larger facet of what we're dealing with.
So, Michael Newman, the homeless coordinator for the City of Springfield Police Department, talking even more about what they aim at doing.
The state of Illinois accepted in 2013 the Homeless Bill of Rights, and I've explained that to some. And the homeless are allowed life-sustaining activities in public. Laying down and sleeping is one of them. So to go to that person and move them along, if we cannot offer them a bed and shelter at that time, that is a violation of the 14th Amendment rights. And it opens the city to suit Right. Some cities have been sued, as Chicago lost a couple years ago to a gentleman that they moved along and moved his things. They lost, I believe, upward of $600,000 to this gentleman. So, they have private rights on public property.
So, again, just some of the sentiment there on why this is so important to tackle, and the police chief, Ken Scarlett, finishes up some of his comments.
We are on the cutting edge of law enforcement in Springfield, and I know that maybe we don't have anything to compare that to, but law enforcement is so much more than putting handcuffs on people and taking people to jail, and we recognize that in the city of Springfield, and I know you all recognize that as well, but that's my goal as a leader of this organization is to utilize every facet possible when it comes to our citizens here in Springfield.
So, again, they have one more ordinance in this package dealing with this overall grant from the state to tackle homelessness and violence prevention and so on.
Or with sojourn shelter and services and payment in the amount of $878,104 pursuant to ICJIA grant number 102301 for the Springfield Police Department.
So all of these different grants coming together here, and we're talking $250,000, and then $377,000, and then $587,000, and then $768,000, and then $878,000. What is that? That's 15. To like $2.7 million or so in grants that are going to different organizations to help in these efforts. So fascinating to hear that. Coming back, we will change topics to focus on the Legacy Sports Shopping Complex from last night's Springfield City Council meeting. So that's next here on WMAY with Springfield's Morning News and the Council Roundup. All right, finishing up the Council Roundup from last night's Springfield City Council meeting, a lot of discussion about tackling the homeless population, but they also discussed the issue of the Legacy Sports Complex that we thought was going to have shovels in the dirt this summer, but that's not the case. An ordinance last night we've heard about before, but a lot of debate about it.
22, an ordinance dissolving a business district realtor's occupational tax, a business service occupational tax, and a business district hotel operator's occupation tax within the boundaries of South Central Business District.
For consent.
Alderman Sean Gregory jumps in with some of his questions on this particular ordinance because, again, we've been talking about this for a long time, and we have now another twist.
I think, as hard as we're working for the sports complex, I would think that they would be here to speak on it, and give us an update and saying, hey, this is what we ran into, and this is what we need the council to do for us to make this happen. And that's the only reason I think it needs to be on debate, for us to review the information, vote for grievance, and make sure we're there. Thank you.
And Alderman Ralph Hanauer, he also shares his thoughts, saying, hey, this is needed. They just need to kind of reset the clock on this business district.
We're abolishing the current one and starting a new one so that the clock starts ticking and it goes 23 years. And that's what they need to get the financing. They were not allowed to, my understanding is they were not allowed to break ground because they did not have the financing. The banks didn't want them to do that.
So, again, they need to reset this. You have Alderwoman Notoriano addressing some of Gregory's concerns.
I appreciate your concerns, Alderman Gregory. I would like to know, I would be interested to know why this seemed to come out of nowhere for the bank, and why we had to go back to the drawing board, why they wanted the full 23 years. Hopefully someone can answer that question for me. But regardless, I think this is a good idea because it's not putting the city out of anything. It's just expanding the area. And I think regardless of whether this complex happens, it's going to be a good thing for that area of MacArthur and Stanford. And it's going to hopefully attract businesses that are going to benefit the whole, that sort of area of town. So I would kind of ask everyone to sort of divorce this from the sports complex if you can, because I think the revised business district is going to be good for the city in general, whether or not the complex happens.
Alderman Williams has a hard time divorcing this from the sports complex because, well, the sports complex is really outside of Shields what's driving the ongoing efforts to get that Legacy Point area filled up with more businesses. Again, here is Alderman Roy Williams from last night's city council meeting.
And we already knew that we was living and trying to do something in an area that has been failure after failure after failure. And you wasn't the alderwoman, but the fact is 2 or 3 others have tried it out there. I think it was a good thing and should be a good thing. But right now, I think we're going above and beyond to get something done that maybe they should have knew about financing. Most developers are required to have the financing in place before we do half of what this city council has done. So I'm just saying we can't divorce it. Why didn't they know that about the business district and the situation? And then like Alderman Gregory saying, where are they? How come they have not been in here explaining themselves to us? All along since I've been on this council and we've been talking about Legacy, Shields, whatever you want to call it, sports complex, they have been taking their time and getting their way with us on everything, and then they continually. What's the update today, Corporate Council? You know, we're going to pass this, and they promise, boom, we're going to go right on into, or is something else going to pop up that says, oh, we need to come back to the city council because can they get the financing or can't they?
Well, this is what's been asked of us in order for them to get the financing. So this makes no guarantee that they have financing in place, but this is what the city needs to do in order for them to go obtain the financing.
And we're willing to do this for all developers, correct? We're fair. So we're going to do this anytime developers run into these kind of situations. We're going to go through all these 100 changes to make this thing happen. That obviously, to me as a developer, if I'd known the reputation of what happened out there before, I definitely wouldn't be taking us through what they're taking us through. But, you know, it's no one's fault up here. I still do think it could be a good project, but I'm tired. I'm tired of the excuses and the changes and the this and that. We just have to do it. I can remember when Alderman Hanauer said, come on, guys, when they were here, you got to get this thing moving.
It's reminiscent of,
6 months out.
What was it, Xanadu or something? A similar idea years ago that never materialized, or the monorail from The Simpsons, who knows? Here's Alderwoman Conley with Val Yazel talking about more of this.
I just want to be clear. This was part of our original development agreement.
It was an original agreement back in like December of 2020, I think, maybe.
Right. And at that time, this council agreed that there would be 23 years for this to go forward on.
That's what we knew, that they had asked for, 23
right.
years, yes.
If we were to not adopt this, how much time is left on that business development?
Let's see, it was started in 89, so 23, 14, so we'd have maybe 7 or 8 years maybe left.
So 7 or 8 years. So in some ways, it could be said that the city council, the city, has not met its obligation that we agreed to at the beginning of this process. I mean, 7 years is not 23.
Right.
So,
yeah, it was brought up at that time that we knew that was, and we also had found out at that time that there was no mechanism. Like with TIFs, we can go and renew a TIF, but we'd also found out at that time that there was no mechanism in place at that time to renew a business district. It indeed would need to be dissolved and then a new one created.
So we couldn't have just tacked on another?
No.
Okay.
There was no mechanism at the state level.
I wanted to be clear that because I was at 99%. So. Thank you.
There you go. So that's last night's Springfield City Council meeting, the Committee of the Whole. They'll have another meeting next Tuesday, so we'll obviously be monitoring that and bring you the latest. So those are just some of the things that the City Council is dealing with. Some other headlines locally. You've got HSHS experiencing a network outage. You can see the State Journal Register report on that, and also the State Journal Register reporting on the security at Chatham schools being upped out of an abundance of caution after some online messages seemed threatening. So again, just some other headlines that we're looking at here on WMAY. It's 8 o'clock.
Fly SPI Studios. Take the easy way out.